Why is it that when you begin to see the world more clearly, truly grasping the truth, you suddenly feel more alone than ever before? Why does personal growth, this blessed awakening, feel like a painful disconnection from everything you once held dear? It seems such a moment should be a triumph, a soul's jubilation, as if you are finally breaking free from years of fog, gaining crystalline clarity in everything. Yet, instead of the expected celebration, something profoundly strange and unsettling occurs. The world around you seems different. Its colors fade or conversely become too harsh. People's voices sound alien, as if coming from afar. Conversations that once offered peace and comfort now echo emptily, devoid of their former meaning. And no, you aren't judging anyone or feeling superior. It's simply that something subtle, yet irreversible, has changed. You sit across from a close friend, who enthusiastically talks about weekend plans, shares recent gossip, and complains about familiar trifles. Suddenly, without any apparent reason, something tightens inside you, and your body involuntarily tenses. You force a polite smile, mechanically nodding, trying to appear engaged. But deep down, you feel utterly detached, as if marooned on an alien, unfamiliar planet. No, not a planet. More like an entirely different frequency of existence. And this is what no one warns you about. The deeper you delve into the awakening process, the more acute this sense of loneliness can become, at least initially. So, why does this happen? Why do people, their words and emotions, suddenly begin to drain you so profoundly when all you've been doing is genuinely growing? This isn't antisocial behavior, it's not mere burnout, and it's certainly not misanthropy. It's something else entirely, requiring deeper understanding. Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychiatrist, grasped the essence of this spiritual fatigue long before anyone could articulate it. He saw it as something far greater than mere awakening. He called it individuation, a profound psychological and spiritual evolution. But this path is not without its unexpected, sometimes painful, costs. We will explore how our relationships with the world and people transform after such a spiritual awakening. We will understand why your soul begins to desperately crave authentic depth, rejecting empty noise, and why superficial conversations begin to grate on it, like coarse sandpaper. We won't wander through the labyrinths of dry theories. Instead, we will delve into the very core of this phenomenon, into its genuine, living, human essence. We will uncover the internal conflicts, the painful stings of guilt, the deep sorrow of loss, and ultimately, the triumphant rebirth that accompany this journey. So, if you have ever felt drained and exhausted after encounters with those you once sincerely loved, if you've been tormented by the question of why others seem so overwhelmingly loud, so deeply asleep, so unbearably distant, stay with us. Because by the end of our conversation, you will realize you are not losing your mind. You are simply awakening to unlock the mystery of what is happening within you. The great Carl Jung left us invaluable keys. Jung believed that most of us wear a mask, not out of malice, but rather as a survival instinct. He called this mask the persona. It's the image we carefully craft and adopt to be accepted by society, the role we play on the stage of life. We wear it everywhere, at work, within our families, even among our closest friends. And for a while, this mask gives us an illusion of protection, a sense of belonging, the cherished feeling of being loved and understood. But then comes the awakening, the moment this carefully constructed persona begins to crack. A subtle whisper awakens deep within, persistently asking, "Is this all there is? Shouldn't there be something more?" Uncomfortable, sometimes painful, questions about yourself and the world begin to arise. A firm no escapes your lips where automatic agreement once prevailed. And the deeper you delve into your true self, the more evident becomes the bitter yet liberating truth. Many of your connections were built not around your authentic self, but around that very persona. This is why, when this mask finally falls, revealing your true self, some relationships, regrettably, cannot withstand the test. This is where that all-consuming exhaustion comes from. It's not that the people around you are bad or have changed. It's that the you who once interacted with them no longer exists. You have changed, and the old mask is gone, unable to play its former role. This is where the real struggle begins. Your nervous system, as if by inertia, continues to play a long-rehearsed role. You step into a room, and your body instinctively tenses, ready to please, entertain, agree, anything to avoid the slightest hint of discomfort or conflict. But deep within, your soul desperately cries out for truth, for self-harmony, for unfeigned authenticity. And this agonizing contradiction between your ingrained habits and your awakening consciousness is precisely what drains all your energy. It is not the people around you, but this internal discord that causes your social burnout. It is the parts of you that refuse to play someone else's role, that can no longer and will no longer pretend. In reality, awakening is not an attempt to escape the world or other people. It is a process of reconnection with your own wholeness, which finally allows you to build relationships in a way that doesn't deplete, but, on the contrary, energizes you. And this is where Carl Jung's concept of the shadow becomes invaluable. The word shadow may sound ominous, even frightening, but it is not evil in the conventional sense. It is merely the invisible side of ourselves, all those fragments of our personality we were taught to be ashamed of, to hide, deny, or reject. This can be our jealousy, our anger, our fear, emotions we try to lock away. But what is truly astonishing, the shadow also holds our immense potential, our unique brilliance, our deep intuitive power, and our sacred categorical no, the ability to uphold our boundaries. The shadow is not just your darkness, it is your true, unrevealed wholeness, longing to be seen and accepted in the light. When the veil lifts and you truly awaken, the world around you changes. You begin to see shadows, not just your own deeply hidden ones, but also those dancing in the souls of others. And this revelation is profoundly striking. Innocuous conversations suddenly acquire new, sometimes unsettling meaning. Now they echo with unconscious energy. You begin to feel the unspoken, to catch the subtle micro-expressions, the most delicate energetic shifts. You sense the pain, projections, and carefully woven masks hiding behind every word, every smile. And then comes the realization, most of your interactions are not encounters between two living souls. They are collisions of two carefully constructed characters, two polished performances, each desperately trying to maintain a fragile peace, avoid the slightest discomfort, and, of course, remain loved. But when your soul finally awakens, playing this endless game becomes impossible. And it's not that you've suddenly become better than someone else. It's simply that your body, your internal compass, begins to fiercely reject any falsehood. This literally feels like an unbearable weight, a suffocation, a complete exhaustion that saps your last ounces of strength. It's like trying to breathe in a locked room without windows, where the air grows heavier and thinner. Truth becomes your oxygen. Authentic honesty is now your only essential nourishment. And this is where the deepest and most personal part begins. You start to recognize your own shadow in others. That friend who always, come what may, has to be right? Perhaps that was once you. that colleague who constantly needs validation. Perhaps that's the very part of you that is still awaiting healing, that you are still carefully nurturing. Have you noticed that those who most frequently irritate you are actually remarkable mirrors? They reflect the very corners of your soul that haven't yet found their place, haven't been fully accepted. As Carl Jung aptly noted, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves. And this, admittedly, is quite uncomfortable. For true awakening is a process where truth reveals itself layer by layer, and each layer can be painful. At first, it seems others are to blame, that the problem is exclusively theirs. Then, with a slight shock, you realize, oh, I was exactly like that. And then comes an even deeper understanding, and I still am, to some extent. But therein lies your growth. You choose awareness. You actively strive for it. And it is this choice that changes everything. However, a treacherous trap lies on the path of awakening. Spiritual ego. The danger of believing you are now enlightened, while everyone else is still asleep. This is not development. It is merely a new, more sophisticated mask. True awakening, however, is profound compassion. Compassion for yourself, for others, and, most importantly, for that younger version of you who once needed those old behavioral patterns simply to survive. It is in this sincere compassion that genuine healing begins. The exhaustion from constant struggle fades, and your energy ceases to be directed towards endless self-protection. Instead, it begins to serve to honor who you truly are in your complete fullness. And here's what's astonishing. As you accept and integrate more of your shadow sides, you stop desperately needing to distance yourself from others, because you are no longer fighting your own reflection that you see in them. If you've ever felt too thin-skinned, too deeply feeling, or too acutely aware of the world around you, prepare yourself. This truth will transform your understanding of who you are. There is one profound truth about awakening that almost no one dares to speak aloud. It's not just a journey of the soul or mind. It's a deep physiological transformation. Your body, and especially your nervous system, undergoes a total overhaul. And believe me, this does not go unnoticed. For most of your life, your nervous system was forced to adapt, constrict, harden, under the onslaught of chaos, deafening noise, unbearable pressure, and pervasive pretense. You grew accustomed to this enduring emotional static electricity, like a background hum that never fully quiets, constantly vibrating in the air. This unrelenting hum conditioned you to be in a constant state of heightened vigilance. You scanned every room, tried to maintain a fragile peace, absorbed others' energies at a dizzying pace. If you are an empath or a highly sensitive person, this wasn't just a habit. It was your only way to survive, your armor and your shield. You didn't just listen to people. You permeated them, absorbed their essence. You didn't just notice moods. You felt them in every cell, as if they were your own. You became a living sponge, defenselessly soaking up all the emotional storms and lulls of those around you. And this unrelenting, exhausting vigilance eventually inflicted irreparable, devastating damage upon your soul and body. And now, imagine adding awakening to this already depleted state. Awakening is not just a step, it's a quantum leap in your perception. You cease skimming the surface of energies. You begin to feel their true depth. Suddenly, you discern dissonance, the subtlest inconsistencies, even unconscious manipulation that previously escaped your notice. You catch the unspoken words, the slightest micro-expressions, the most delicate energetic shifts. Your nervous system, not yet adapted to this overwhelming influx of information, instantly enters a critical overload state. The nervous system desperately tries to catch up with your expanded consciousness, but for now, it reacts with old, familiar patterns. Unexplained tension mounts, chronic fatigue accumulates, emotional overwhelm floods, and there's an acute, almost physical need to retreat. And it is about this, the most difficult and unglamorous side of awakening, that no one seems to speak aloud. Awakening is not a serene contemplation of the world from a mountaintop, as depicted in romantic images. Much more often, it feels like an overwhelming, unbearable sensory overload in a noisy, crowded room where every sound and movement pierces you. Even an ordinary everyday conversation can transform into a deafening, static hum, buzzing directly in your brain if your body hasn't yet learned to regulate itself in this new, intense state of awareness. And it is this state that often leads many awakened souls to mistakenly believe themselves to be broken. But understand, you are not broken. You are simply no longer numb. You've finally begun to feel what has always been present in the world but was skillfully hidden by the filters of your conditioning. And yes, this flood of sensations can be incredibly, utterly exhausting. Forget about being too sensitive. You are simply deeply sensitive. Your soul is finely tuned into life in all its raw, untamed beauty. And in this lies something truly beautiful. As your sensitive nervous system learns to harmonize with your higher self, the internal chaos subsides. Waves of emotional overload recede, leaving peace in their wake. You begin to discern the subtlest nuances without letting them consume you. You learn to empathize with people while remaining yourself, rather than dissolving into their emotions. You observe the world without taking everything personally. And it is in this moment that each social interaction transforms, becoming a sacred act of genuine connection. You no longer need to shrink, as if trying to become invisible. There's no need to erect protective barriers. You simply stand firm, rooted in your own powerful energy, allowing others to be who they are, without judgment or fear. So, what truly happens after you overcome the exhausting fatigue, find inner balance, and begin to attract completely different, profound relationships? How do you interact with the world from your authentic self, not from the old burden of guilt, imposed duty, or automatic habit? Something inexpressibly beautiful and, frankly, boundlessly liberating occurs. The moment you shed the mask and stop playing the role assigned to you, your entire world changes. You no longer cling to connections out of survival fear. Now you choose them based on internal resonance, on your soul's response. You stop people-pleasing to avoid the slightest conflict. Instead, you begin to honor your innermost truth, even if it sometimes feels inconvenient or causes resistance. You don't stay where you are merely loved, you stay where you are seen, truly to your very core. This is a subtle yet incredibly powerful realization, and instead of seeking this support externally, you discover it within, becoming the very security you once desperately craved. The great Carl Jung insightfully asserted that the true goal of psychological wholeness is not unattainable perfection, but deep integration. This means to embrace and weave together every part of yourself, your conscious self and hidden unconscious patterns, your shadow and your light, your deep wounds and your wise strength, everything, completely. Not to become flawless, but to be authentic, alive and real. And it is from this authenticity that magic is born. Your relationships begin to transform, as if by magic. You notice with surprise that you attract people who speak the language of your soul, whose energetic footprint doesn't drain you because they don't ask you to shrink or diminish yourself. They don't project their pain onto you, but instead, with deep respect, create space for your own pain. These are truly resonant, kindred connections that often blossom after a period of deep solitude. But this solitude was not bitter loneliness. It was sacred time when your inner field was clearing, making space for the new, finally recalibrating your energetic boundaries, preparing you to meet those who are truly yours. At the heart of awakening, you might feel disoriented, as if something has irrevocably changed. You no longer interact with people as before, and this can be unsettling. But let me reveal the truth, you shouldn't. The way you related before is no longer relevant. Now, your approach stems from a much deeper source, from authentic presence, crystalline clarity, and absolute alignment with yourself. And this, without exaggeration, transforms your entire world. You no longer adapt to others' energy just to maintain a fragile peace. From now on, your inner peace becomes the compass guiding every interaction. You stop desperately proving your worth. You simply radiate it, embodying it. You cease communicating out of guilt, out of involuntary obligation. Now you choose your connections, freely and consciously. And no, this doesn't make you callous or detached. On the contrary, it gives you deep rootedness, an unshakable foundation. Your love becomes incredibly powerful because it is no longer distorted or filtered by fear. And yes, some people will inevitably leave your life, not because you are abandoning them or becoming worse, but because their connection with you was attuned only to a version of you that you have long outgrown. Experiencing this grief is also an integral part of your awakening. But make no mistake, this is not a setback. It is, in essence, a step home to your true self. Every ending is not a conclusion, but an invitation to something new and authentic. And everyone who remains or enters your life after this profound process will interact with the authentic you, the one who was hidden beneath the persona and existed beyond all preconceptions. Carl Jung once proclaimed, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And this profound exhaustion, this feeling of detachment, this oppressive isolation, this heightened sensitivity to others' energy, all of it is not accidental, but an integral part of that very privilege. Because the true reward of this awakening is not an escape from people or the world. It is creating such an unshakable inner sanctuary, such a deep restoration of your own space, that nothing and no one can ever again knock you off your axis or disturb this newfound peace. So, if you are currently experiencing this strange, draining state where every encounter with people feels like an insurmountable burden, every sound is deafening, and you've simply grown tired of pretending to be someone you're not, trust this feeling. It is not weakness, but a sure sign that you are waking up. And when you pass through this transition and emerge on the other side, you won't just see others differently. You will begin to live a completely different, authentic life.